Okay, this is one of my favorite lessons. This is a lesson definitely you want to pay attention to. It would really help you not only in future lessons in this class, but also especially in eighth grade civics class where you're going to be going much more deeply into government. Here is your basic introduction to government. But before we get to the colonial government, let me just point out a few things. As I talked about earlier, in 1707, England joins with Scotland to become Great Britain. Remember, we talked about the flags. We had the English flag, we got the Scottish flag. They're both separate countries. And then when they joined together to form Britain, and then we get the British flag. This is something that's probably a little bit more familiar when we talk about England and France. The English flag is right in here, and then you got the Scottish flag. So, pretty neat flag the way that they put it together. Anyway, now they're a more powerful country, and they're going to expect more from their colonies. So they need to set up a government to make sure that these colonies do what they're supposed to do, and that they're not cheating the king or doing things behind his back. They want to make sure that they have a fair amount of control over these colonies because there's no Twitter, there's no Facebook or anything like that, no satellites, no cell phones, no phones at all, no electricity. It's a situation where communications are very, very slow. If you want to communicate to somebody, you write a message, you hand it to somebody, they go on a boat, and then they sail a couple months to the colonies to give it to them, and then they write a response and put it on a boat, and it takes a couple more months. So, you're talking about a half a year before you can ask a question and then get an answer. Very, very slow. So it's not very efficient to continuously give them orders across the ocean because by the time that order gets there, the situation has changed, and that's not going to work. Um, so how are they going to set up this government? First, they're going to have, and right now what you could do is you could take out your reproducible 74 of colonial government. We're going to start with the governor. The governor is going to be one branch here, and the governor is selected by a king or proprietor. And a proprietor is a person who owns a very large tract of land, but usually the king is the one that's going to pick the governor. And really, the governor, when the proprietor picks a governor, they're choosing them with the idea that they're going to please the king. They're going to look out for the king. They're going to look out for the empire as a whole and make sure that the colony doesn't do anything weird. They're very, very powerful people. So Parliament, which is Britain's government, is really in control. They're the ones that are more powerful than the colonial governments. But what they decide to do is that they're just going to make decisions about trade, military, and money matters, and that the day-to-day running of the colonies, things that are not that don't concern the rest of the empire, are just going to be uh, done by the colonies. So, for instance, if they want to decide that stores can't be open on Sundays, the colonies are going to make that decision. If they're going to go to war with France or make a trade treaty with Spain, that's going to go to the parliament. Okay? So getting back to the governor, and let's bring it over here. Oops, excuse me. The governor is going to be in charge of the local militia. He's also something that you really need to know is that he's going to enforce the laws. So whatever laws are in the book, he's in charge of making sure that everybody obeys the rules. And then if the legislature creates any new laws, that he has to approve it. It has to go through him, and if he signs off on it, it's law. If he doesn't, it's no good. They're going to have to try again. So that's very, very powerful. There's really no check on this guy. He can decide basically if the legislature is doing their job or not, and then nobody can do anything about it except for the king. Now, the legislature is broken up into two parts here. We can see the legislature is over here, and the first part is going to be the governor's council. The governor's council is chosen by the governor or proprietor, and they're going to represent basically the governor in the legislature. Now the legislature writes the laws. They come up with the new rules, and if it passes them, then it goes to the governor, and then if the governor signs off, then it's a new law. Otherwise, it doesn't go through. Anyway, the governor's council is trying to please the governor, and the governor's trying to please the king because that's who appointed them. The assembly is a different matter. The assembly is the other branch that goes right over here, and they are selected by the people of the colony. So they are responsible to the people. They're going to be sensitive to the colonists. And so we have talked about this in fourth grade. You probably remember the House of Burgesses. That's the assembly that we're talking about in Virginia. It's called the House of Burgesses. So they're trying to make up laws that are going to help the people, and the governor's council and the governor are making sure that the king is not being not going. They're not trying to go against the king or do something that's going to hurt the empire. So the assembly really has very little power, although they do have some power. They're at the table making the rules. But once it really comes down to it, the governor's council and the governor can shut them down if they want to. So this is a real problem when things aren't going so well with Great Britain, and the colonies want something and Britain doesn't want them to have it. Britain's going to win every time, and this is going to be frustrating. Think about when you're talking with your parents, you really want something, and they say no, and you really want it, you really. It's very frustrating when you cannot win a battle, and so I'm sure you've experienced this. So as time goes on and people are getting frustrated with the government, they're going to start rebelling. They're going to start asking questions and saying, "No, we want to do it our way, and you're not letting us." And after a while, there's going to be a confrontation called the Revolutionary War.